Welcome back to Technically Speaking. We're so glad you joined us today. This is a program through Playhouse in the Park where I, Lindsay, sit down with the tech crew of the shows that you see here on stage, musicals, straight plays, children's theater. There's an army of volunteers that come together to make this community theater happen. And today we're joined by Marci Jo Garner Edmonds. That's a mouthful.
I know.
She is our Props Mistress. You probably have seen her on stage though, but most of what she does is magic behind the scenes. So before we talk about that magic, first tell us why you got involved at Playhouse in the Park.
Oh, I got bit with the theater bug a long time ago. Not going to specify too many years, but when I came to Murray in college, I met up with some people who knew Michael Dunnigan, and he was the former executive director, and came to Playhouse, saw some shows, helped out with a few things, and did not leave until we moved away. Then we came back, and I got to work with him again, and the wonderful Don Fleming as well at Brent Webster, and then moved again, but this time just over the border, and I had my daughter. So I was on hiatus for just a little while. I was actually pregnant when Michael passed. And I brought her to a children's show and then a library event that the Box of Frogs was having, and that's where I got to meet Lisa Cope and got acquainted, introduced myself, and she gave me her card, and we just sort of clicked there.
That's awesome. So what keeps you involved?
I'm gonna get corny and say family.
Yes.
When you join Playhouse, you don't just join a theater, you join a family.
Yes.
And every time, it's not the same people at the reunions.
Yeah.
But you go, and if you have it's like a calling to theater to me. I know it sounds stupid, but
no,
it's like when you walk in there and you have the house and you have the stage, and it can be a set, it can be bare, it can be just the work light. When it feels like home, it's what brings you back to it over and over.
That's awesome.
That's me.
That's awesome. So before we go into what you do, could you define what a prop is for us?
A prop is anything that an actor carries on and off stage. It gets confused a lot. And there are a lot of gray areas. A lot of times people confuse it with set pieces and set decoration. Sometimes set pieces and set decoration actually are props because they get utilized and then taken off. Like if an umbrella is on the stage, for instance, and it stays there the entire time, it's just in the coat rack the entire time, then you've got yourself a set piece and set decoration. If an actor at any point in time is going to pick up and use that, then it goes into the prop and costume category, which is where your gray area happens. But it's when it's utilized by an actor. Or like our cameraman, Kevin, if the coat rack actually becomes something that they grab and utilize, it goes from being a set piece to being a prop. So sometimes things pull double duty, and you have to have good communication with your different people. I'm answering way more than you asked me.
You're fine.
You have to have communication with the set people as well as the costume crew, because sometimes that stuff that's in those gray areas, you may have two people working on the same thing, and that's just a waste of time when you have a small window to get everything done.
So, for instance, a fedora, which is a hat.
Right.
In the first act, it's just hanging on a coat rack by the door.
Right.
So it's a set piece or a set decoration.
Set decoration, right there.
In the second act, it's picked up and thrown across the stage, then it's a prop.
Prop.
The third act, somebody puts on, it's a costume piece.
Absolutely.
That gets a little confusing.
All of those. Party hats are the same kind of thing, and anything like that. Sweaters get used differently. There are a lot of things that someone would say, oh, that's just costumes. Oh, that's that. And a lot of times, people, this is the other part where I said you don't want two people working on the same thing.
Right.
You also don't want nobody working on it because they think, oh, that's a set piece, or oh, that's a costume piece. You have to know, okay, is this on your list?
Yeah.
Because it's on mine, and I just don't want us both, or, well, okay, I'll do it then.
So we call you the Props Mistress because you kind of oversee the collection of props at Playhouse.
Yes.
There are other people who sometimes help with shows and grab things and do things.
Absolutely.
But you kind of are the keeper of the master collection.
I'm the head of our props committee. So I'll be the key master of our props. And a lot of times, this is the other part, people check in because not everything belongs to Playhouse.
Right.
So you need somebody that knows, oh, hey, where did you get this for a certain show? But for the things that do belong to Playhouse, I try to keep up with all of those and try to keep tabs on where what is and for what show it can be used. Because sometimes we lend things out.
Right. So how did you get involved in props? How did that happen?
Way back, I'm going to say in elementary and middle school, whenever we would do a school production and it's like, okay, guys, we're going to make this and we're going to do that. It's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay. And it's like, hey, we need, I brought out lemonade in an 8th grade play and stuff. It's like, we need a tray and stuff. It's like, hey, I've got that at home. I can find that. I can bring that in. I'll do it. So I just started thinking when scripts were read, stories were read, any skit we did in school or anything like that, I would think, hey, we need this. Hey, I can find that. And it just kind of happened.
And if you can't find it, you can make it.
If I can't find it, I try to make it. Yes. I love to fabricate things. That's a lot of fun too.
That is so cool. So we've talked in other episodes about the director kind of picking their team of the people they want to work with. Once a director picks you and you look at the script and decide what you need, what are you specifically responsible for during the run of a show? From rehearsals to the actual striking of the set, which is what happens after a show closes.
Right. Well, it depends, again, on the director and their team. A lot of times, especially if I am able to be in the show, I just touched that, Kevin, I'm sorry.
You're not the first one.
Okay. I'm going to say that again because I hit the microphone. A lot of times a director, once I meet the director and the crew, you find out exactly where your role is going to be. Because if I had my choice, I would be at every show and backstage and make sure everything's lined up pre-show and then have the checklist. My job tends to be where pre-show I make sure things are lined up and then we sign it off to the stage manager who then takes over that duty. So they make sure once I get everything signed off, all right, this is done, then they take over and it's not mine so much until there's a problem. There's a lot of problems sometimes.
Yes.
Because actors and crew touch things and they shouldn't.
What's the number one rule of theater?
It's on a big poster above the props thing. If it's not yours,
don't touch
it. My daughter actually did that to my husband the other day. It was funny. So things get broken, and sometimes it just happens.
Right.
Sometimes it happens because people mess with stuff. Sometimes things disappear entirely because it doesn't get put back to the proper place. And occasionally you have, especially if it's something small, like a watch or a ring or something like that, it goes home in the actor's pocket. And they're like, oh, I forgot it. And then you're stuck. So I'd like to try to have backups or something that we could mock up as a backup on hand. So we try to keep a few things in the green room for that purpose. Because you never know, emergency situations, there's always an audience and it's always during the show when it's happening.
Right.
So if I can be there, I like to be. That's why if I'm acting in a show, I'm fine to be working on props too, because I'm already there and I know how it's used and what's needed. I hope I answered that.
Oh, that was a great answer.
Okay.
So that kind of leads us to the next question. What kinds of tools and equipment might you use to make props or to sustain props? I know you do so much repair on props.
I do a ton of repair on props. I use a little bit of everything. I've gone from wire and caulk to spray foam and spray paint, felt, regular styrofoam, paper, newspaper, I mean all kinds of things that I utilize. And the tools in the shop, occasionally I use those. I have my own at home as well. But it depends on the show, really, which tools you're going to need and what out of the box thinking that's going to happen. Erica Benedict one time said she channeled her inner Marci with something, and that was like the biggest compliment because she said, thinking, what would Marci do? And when people are saying stuff like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like they think I can do something neat. Yeah. But I make things with milk cartons with different things, stuff that people think is trash. They'll say, oh, why is this bag of whatever over here in the green room? And it's like, no, I've been saving that up for this show specifically. Right. And things get thrown out all the time.
And you never know what they're going to ask. And one time Lisa came to me and she needed help with prop, and she said, can you make a goat?
I love that goat.
And she said, and I need it to bleed. And I was like, we made it bleed. We made a goat that could be dismembered. This was for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. They slaughtered a goat on stage, but it had to bleed. And I was like, that was one prop that took me weeks. And I thought, how does Marci do this with multiple props and shows like? Remember, Addams Family had a lot of really complicated props, and I thought
some great props.
That's a hard show, different.
That one comes with its own set of. Love you, Rusty. Depending on your director, some get very excited and very involved, and will give you the list of things that they are taking care of and the stuff you are taking care of. And sometimes they take care of stuff on your list and forget to tell you because they get excited. But no, he was very good with that show, and said, and we've got a plant coming and things, and so that part was awesome that he had the one to bleed. And then I found like cat toys to feed it, so it had its little mice and things. But when there are a lot of props and when they get more intricate, I don't know, things can get crazy.
And especially in that show, things were more gothic. And then, with Joseph, it was biblical times.
Right.
But with some modern spin on it. So those things, you have to make a lot of that stuff.
And there are other things you have to find what the director, this is a big deal. Because my vision might be different from what the theme of the show is to begin with.
Right.
When we did Godspell, and I talked with Lynn Melton about it, Miss Lynn had this other theme, and it was like, okay, so, and the way that her stuff was, things were kind of cutesy, and there was industrial and things. Is like, okay, I get what you're going. So these Pharisee things that we made, instead of going for the traditional robe type thing, we got tarps and cardboard and stuff that would be found objects for them. And the water for that was able to be streamers whenever it came out of a bucket, because it was found objects and like magic trick look things, and it just had a different vibe.
Wow.
So that's something important to know. It's your vision for a prop is not always what the director wants. And that's the main thing. Communication is a big deal.
Well, you brought a prop today to show us how this worked. Tell us about this.
Okay, so we needed a flit sprayer. I actually, this is the second one I've made, because they're, one, kind of expensive if you go looking for an actual flit sprayer, and two, because it needed to move better, and I couldn't find where the original disappeared to. But this, just when you need to spray your bugs, it needed to function and
that's
move
really neat.
and be
So what is
used.
that made out of?
This particular one is a water squirter and a tin can and a conduit piece here, and some spray paint and some contact paper and some hot glue. Yeah.
And a little time.
And a little bit of time. A couple screws here and there. Yeah, a couple of different things go into it.
I think that's really awesome, because a lot of people, when you see the magic come alive on stage, you don't know what things are made of. You know?
No.
And I think of a lot of the collaboration happened with Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
Because a lot of those costumes, Lumiere had candles.
Yes.
And Chip had to have a actual teacup.
Yes.
And so that was a lot of collaborating between props and costumes,
Absolutely.
because you had the technical knowledge of how to make his hands glow.
That was
and
a lot
with
of fun.
Little Mermaid with Sebastian's claws, that was kind of a specialty piece.
I mean, there's a lot of different things. That's where I mean, you have to work together to get the things, one, cohesive, because you worked on that with the costume part for your candlesticks, and they wound up matching my candlesticks, and it was on the same page.
Right.
And you can tell if it looks cohesive versus, oh, someone else made that, you know, and that's never a good thing, you know. So when it has that great overall look.
And that kind of lends to the fact that we all kind of do a little bit of everything at Playhouse.
Yes.
So the candlesticks really aren't props, but you know how to make that work.
But they are because they have to light, and
they're costume pieces at the same time.
Yes.
That's so interesting.
That's in that gray area kind of thing.
So we all do a lot.
Yes.
We all have a really extensive toolkit. If you're ever in line for a show, this is kind of my favorite thing. When I'm walking into a show and I have my toolkit, I feel kind of like a superhero walking in the back because I have my sewing kit, I have glue, I have glitter, I have sequins, because you never know what's going to happen backstage.
Absolutely. I call mine my go bag.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, make sure you have the go bag.
Anybody in the show can walk up to a costumer or a prop person and be like, this broke and we have the tool to fix it.
Yes, and I so many times it's happened when we're actually patrons.
Right.
And not in that show.
Right.
And stuff's like, okay, well, I left it in the van. Let me go get it, and then you go and fix something. I always love that.
This
Superhero
really has
is a
nothing
great term.
to do with props, but this is just a funny Lindsey and Marci story because we're friends.
Okay.
Do you remember the show where I was helping with the show and I cut my hand right before the show went off, and you were in full costume? They yelled places, and you were like taping my hand back together. You were playing nurse, props mistress, and actress in that show.
Well, a little bit of first day. Yeah.
And I was just trying to be the costumer. Stuff like that happens backstage all the time.
That was before the new bathrooms because we still had the sink backstage, didn't we?
Yes. That was really funny.
Well,
you never know what's going to happen.
Maybe not funny, but not funny, haha.
I was laughing hysterically because I was like,
you were laughing.
It's like, I can't believe that just happened. So I'm no longer allowed to use scissors at Playhouse. That's kind of a long-running joke.
She gets the kitty ones.
I use the kitty scissors.
Yes.
So when you're doing a show, Marci, what is your time commitment as a props person?
That depends on the show.
Right.
It really does. If it's something where a lot of fabrication has to happen, and also depends on the cast.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about, they touch a lot and break a lot. I mean, there's a big difference when it's a cast of 3 or 4 and you have so many people, not that a cast of 3 or 4 don't break things, Kevin, but
the cameraman's getting a lot of hate today.
No, I love him. I love you, Kevin, so much. But the amount of items you have to acquire, like when we did 1776, I'm told, and as soon as a director can give you that list, that will help. And if a director doesn't have their list until it gets closer to time, it's like, and you start sweating and you start hounding people. But I get told, oh, hey, can you have some handkerchiefs? Can you have some fans and some of these? I was like, yes, I have all these things. Okay. All right. I agree to do a show. And then it's like, by the way, I need like 40 of these. I need 25 of these. And then it's like, okay, let's put in some more time. And then you locate and you either acquire, borrow, or purchase things. And then the aging process happens too, because I retain a lot of things. Some people pitch stuff, they see paper and they just throw it away. I'm like, no, we have more shows, then we need, and I'm going and grabbing them. But if you tea stain or age any fabric, any paper, that just because the show's over doesn't mean that the life of that prop is over.
Right.
Because it can be used again. We use things in Crucible that I pulled back out, and it's like, okay, 1776, they need lots of parchment. They need lots of things. So it depends. When it's aging things, I put in some more time because you have to stain and dry and flatten and everything, all these things for one piece of paper.
Right.
And when you need multiples, it just, I don't know. It depends on the show. It can be a few hours a day to many, many hours a day.
Yes, and this isn't just in the 6 to 8 week window of rehearsals.
Right.
We get the list of shows in October, November, so we're preparing for the whole year. Hopefully in advance.
There are a lot of things that we do. Like I said, it depends on the vision too, because until you are selected to work on that show, like I try to have staples. I'll call them those, like our rotary phones and different things that we know can be used for multiple shows. We try to keep a good selection of those. But you might have the thing where they want to go psychedelic for this theme. And then it's like, okay, let's find the lip phone instead. Or let's find, stuff like that. So you might think you have it. And as many times as you think, okay, I'm prepared. And like I worked forever for camp this year and I have so much stuff for that. And then we couldn't have it, know. But aside from that, it may be that your vision for, like, our Willy Wonka was different, but it had the traditional feel. Somebody might have decided to go completely industrial and have everything in monochromatic black and white. You never know until you have that meeting with the director, and that does fall in that 6-week window. Yeah.
That's stressful. So what type of budget does the props team work with, and what could destroy that budget if something went wrong?
Theoretically, we have roughly about $100, maybe $150, but roughly about $100 for a show. I try to keep that as low as possible by reusing those staples, borrowing things, making things. I acquire a lot of things. My house is fairly eclectic with stuff. If I make it, I generally keep it.
Right.
But a lot of things that can happen with a show are if it's a more extravagant set, if it's a bigger cast and you have more costumes that need to be made, that's a thing, because fabric's not cheap. A lot of people think, oh, well, we'll just do this, or sometimes things have to be double cast, and that means 2 costumes, and that eats away a little bit of the budget. So I try to keep it as low as possible to have a buffer, and sometimes you just don't have it for it's like, hey, can you work some magic? It's like, yeah, let's try, and stuff. But then you have things like we did A Christmas Story, and that had a specialty prop in it. And with that one, we had to make sure, because it was a large cast, a lot of props anyway, we had to make sure to kind of do a raffle, a sideline type of thing to help pay for that prop. Because if you're ordering a full-size leg lamp, those guys aren't cheap. And that right there, the whole budget's gone.
Right.
With one prop.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this wasn't on the list of questions I prepared, but as we have these conversations, things come to my mind.
Okay.
And this is going to be fun, I think. Let's talk a little bit about the magic of props, because there are things like hot lights, but what if you need ice cream on stage? What's something you would use instead?
Okay. I will say first, I'm going to tell you a couple of things.
Okay.
But I may plead the fifth on things because I like the magic to stay magic. But for ice cream, I will tell you that we have done mashed potatoes for ice cream on stage because things melt.
And that's a very common thing. If you didn't know this, in a lot of ice cream ads, they use mashed potatoes because the hot lights will melt your ice cream.
They melt it, absolutely. Another thing, speaking of ice melts on stage. So you routinely have to not have it, especially if something's going to happen where, say, a drink is thrown. Because actors walk around in the dark a lot, and we go from light to dark, and you're blinded. And if one stray ice cube decided to stay on stage and melt later, that can be hazardous. You wouldn't think just a little bit of water would be, but it can really trip you up, especially if it's a physical show.
Well, one of my favorite things that you collect is broken glass and broken pieces. What is that for?
It's for a crash box. This is something people think, oh, my teacup broke, and I find out later, I was like, okay, where are the pieces? And people are, oh, no, you couldn't have fixed it. And it's like, number one, let me be the judge of if I can fix it, because you'd be surprised. But two, I keep those things for our crash box specifically because the more you use one, the more things break. And a crash box, anytime you're in a show and you hear the broken window or somebody in the kitchen dropped all their plates and everything broke, you do that by lining a box and so that your little shards aren't going to come out, and you drop it. It makes a crash. it's in the name.
But eventually
it's self-explanatory.
That turns into dust. So
You've
got to replace your Craftbox
You keep
contents.
replacing it. So we're utilizing the pieces and trying, again, the sustainability part. It's like, okay, I don't want to really go break a perfectly good plate if one's already broken. Let's put it in here. I don't need people to necessarily bring me their broken stuff. So we don't need a pile of broken stuff because we generally acquire that on accident.
Just naturally in the theater.
Naturally in the theater.
Yeah. Yes. So are there any set pieces or prop pieces that we do need ever? Things that come up that we could add to our collection?
We always need stuff.
Yes.
I know people hate when I say, yes, we need stuff, we need donations, because they think, oh, storage. But I don't want to discourage people either. Period pieces, people think that ugly old set of dishes or that, like the avocado green Tupperware that people used to have, or the burnt orange color, things like that stand out and scream 70s.
Or that hideous owl
60s.
that people had on their shelf.
Yes. A traditional cuckoo clock, things like that. Things that stand out and are just unique, those I love to see. And then again, there's standard things too, like just silverware. If we have a large dinner scene, you need a lot of silverware, and having to go out and purchase it, I mean, it can be cheap stainless steel stuff, but things like that, tea sets and staple pieces, because things break.
Right.
And we go through them. So if we have a couple pots and kettles or a couple of different great pieces, I'm always on the lookout for that. Sometimes this is going into the set piece part, but when we see tables and chairs, not that we can take on a lot, but if there were a couple of great period chairs, those kind of things, because a table generally you can throw a tablecloth on, and it could be a more modern one. But if we saw a great 50s, 60s mod set or something, I would be on the lookout for things like that.
And not just with the prop pieces you brought today, but everything on our set can be used for a prop or a set piece. This couch has wheels on it because it was used in the theater.
Yes.
And these books have been on stage. So everything here we recycle and we reuse and sometimes refurbish if we need to.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you said that. I have something that I did want to say today as far as tips and tricks on refurbishing things. Again, sustainability. I know I keep saying that. But we're in for the long haul when it comes to our props. Right. If we buy something, we're investing in it. And the quickest way to ruin that on a show, if you're volunteering, is to slap some hot glue on it.
Yes.
If you can whip stitch or just loosely wire something together or anything, sewing really it takes a little bit more time to sew that patch on than it is just to glue it on. But then we can take it off without damaging things. Right. And that's a big no-no. Yes, we use our hot glue guns. I use the heck out of them, been burned many a time. But you got to think for past this moment and this show when you're looking at props.
That's a great thing.
Yes.
And we've talked about that with costumes too.
Absolutely.
We're investing in things, and we're going to hang on to things that are, if we have it, what would it cost us to rebuy that in the future?
Absolutely.
Let's maintain it.
Yes.
So you'll notice one of the costume things is we have some furs, and we keep those in a climate-controlled room because it would be really expensive to replace that if we had them in our hot warehouse.
And they shed. They start to dry rot and shed, just like different props and things as well. I love that we have some climate control because things are body parts. Yes. I'll just say some of our arms and legs and things that we've had to have in the past. That stuff dry rots. The rubber and the latex will do that, and vinyl will do it too. Plastics, they take a toll. So those are some good points with that as well.
Awesome. Well, as we kind of wrap up today, tell us about your biggest challenge you have ever faced as a props mistress.
Ever? Can I just say one of the more recent ones?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know about ever. Budget is always a challenge. So that's across the board has been budget. But one of my favorite things that is a more recent was making the water bleed in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yes.
So when that went right, which it did so many times, and there was one time it didn't, and that was the night that just
I saw you
felt
backstage.
horrible. I was not happy, and poor Casey again, I am sorry. He saw me backstage and was like, well, and then you it's like your heart breaks and everything. But I would watch every night. I would watch that, and whenever he would come back and wash his hands and press, then the water came up and it started to bleed, and then he turns and it's all red. I'm like, yes! And it was just, you're on cloud 9,
That's awesome.
And the one time it goes wrong, it's like just the whole world falls apart. It shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't feel just like that, but I mean, they're my babies.
In our episode with Stephen Keen, we talk about perfectionism a lot. We're all perfectionists. It happens. It's okay.
Yes.
That just means that our community theater is really good.
And we care.
Yeah, we care.
That is another thing about it. What brings you back? Our community theater has heart.
Yes.
We
yes,
care.
We do. Yes,
and
we
you
do.
can tell.
So what is your favorite show you've ever worked on?
Oh my goodness. I've worked on a lot of shows.
Yes. What are your favorites?
I absolutely loved, it was years ago, I worked on the female version of The Odd Couple with Michael Dunnigan. That was my first show coming back. I loved working on Frankenstein years ago because I got to do the creature makeup for that one. After coming back, I loved doing Shrek. It was fun and tiring and crazy, big cast, but so much fun and out of the box things. And I was a witch and made Lisa laugh, which was great. She just looked at my profile. I loved working on my first show back to Playhouse after I had my daughter. It was dearly beloved, and I got to work on that with Brian T. O'Neill, and we did some prop gathering with that, and that was part of bringing me back into working with Playhouse. Big Rover holds a big place in my heart. There are so many shows. Yes. I mean, Driving Miss Daisy and Sound of Music. I loved. Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah. I mean, Matilda. Loved working on that one. And I had a teeny tiny bit part in that, but just working on that show and the energy and the out of the box and the puppets and the lighting, and once it all comes together, there's so many shows I loved. Yeah. Rent, I loved working on that. And Avenue Q with the puppets.
Oh yeah.
That was fantastic working with actors and not actors, because your actor was
the puppet
right there, and then you had to tell the handler how it had to work, but I felt like I was teaching the puppet how to use their drink when they were,
That's so cool.
I don't know, there's so many. Yeah. And then the children's camps, I love those shows too, because I direct and have been before. I was helping to direct those shows, worked in the costumes and the props for those as well, but I don't know. And I loved doing our Moonlight and Magnolias recently too. That was just, there's so many great shows. I don't have a one favorite. Yeah. But those are some of my favorites from Playhouse.
So final question.
Okay.
If someone wants to join the prop team.
Yes.
If someone wants to come and volunteer, obviously we're not doing shows right now because of the pandemic, but when you're up and running, which we hope is very soon. Hopefully. What kind of skills would they need, and how would they get involved with you and the prop team?
Okay. If they are willing to think creatively, have good communication skills, if they're handy with a glue gun or can sew, or even if they can't. I mean, I'm willing to teach people how to do things if they're willing to learn and think out of the box. Those are the big things that I go for. If you're handy at just you like to shop or flea market, if you're someone that loves stuff like that, those are very, very big skills for us as well, because it's like, okay, I've talked to Bridget Poore all the time with things. She'll be on the lookout. I'll be on the lookout. Lise Jones is fantastic with fabrication and looking and thinking, hey, what do we have to do in the future? If you can make your brain think about the stuff instead of just the show, then we can use you. I mean, if you know how to paint, that's a big thing. So anything, really. If you're crafty, talk to me if you're not crafty, but you like to look for things.
If you like woodworking, that's another one. That's the thing that comes in handy a lot.
Absolutely. And any kind of skill, and there are skills people don't realize are skills. Like, I mean, the people that just like to go to auctions and stuff, and people that love to eBay, you know, maybe.
Or people who like electronics and can make things light up and spin and glow and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Anyone that can do any kind of thing like that. Tricks, camera stuff. I mean,
yeah, that's awesome.
Pyros.
Yeah.
Responsible pyros will go. Thanks.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Marci. This has been a lot of fun. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Technically Speaking. As always, check out the Playhouse in the Park Facebook page for more information about what we're doing in this pandemic. And we hope to see you back in the theater very soon. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.